From 1968 to 1970, I served in ground combat in Vietnam while in the U.S. Army. Recently, I found this 8mm film I'd shot during that period. I was in the 3rd Brigade of the 1st Air Cavalry Division, served in military intelligence. This is a C-130. This is at Benoit Air Force Base sometime in March or April of 1969. Globemaster Air Force. We can tell this is not where I usually was stationed because it had asphalt rather than just the red clay dirt you see behind me now. This is Landing Zone Andy in Quan Loy, Vietnam, about up in Ben Long Province, about 15 miles from the Cambodian border, on no French rubber plantation. Those roses were planted by some French lady many years ago, or more likely her gardener. This was the plantation house that we got to use as a headquarters. This was our second time doing operations out of LCND, but the first time we got the house. This is our Tactical Operations Center, mostly underground, a bunker, protected with sandbags filled with, yes, sand, or at least red clay dirt. Looking out towards some of the helicopter pads, there's a helicopter winding up to take off. During combat, you spend probably 90% of the time waiting and doing other things rather than actually fighting. You have time to play with the cheap Kodak home movie cameras I'm doing here. And yes, that's a mustache I have. We call that a cavalry mustache. Used to wax it and curl the ends. I really like that mustache. In fact, I wanted to bring it home with me, and when I was rotating back to the States, this is a captured machine gun. A big MP told me, either you get rid of the mustache or you stay. And I said, you got a razor. And helicopter going by in the distance there. This is the radio tower that the brigade had to keep in touch with units in the field. We had a number of battalions under us, such as the 7th United States Cavalry, Custer's old outfit. I was in it for a while. That's a Chinook helicopter flying by. They're still in use, surprisingly, even though it's 37 years later. Another view of the roses. These plantations were huge. It's one of my bosses, nice guy. Back to the roses. And somewhat out of focus close-up of me. I was just learning to use the camera. Jeep going by. We didn't have Hummers back then. We had the little Jeeps like in World War II. Another C-130. This is that friend of mine walked in front. That's me again. This is probably when we're moving the headquarters somewhere. This looks like it's at the LCND strip, which was a 3,000-foot dirt strip. And yeah, this is definitely LCND. I recognize the hills. That's a Caribou, a C6 in the background, and of course the dog's playing. Wherever there are GIs, dogs get treated well. We fed the dogs and took care of them. There goes the C6 taxiing out. This old film, it was taken in large part, there's somebody else filming, during moves and downtimes when I had time to play with the camera. When I went out in the field, I was much more concerned with staying alive than taking movies. That's a Chinook helicopter. At the end of this film, we'll fly off in one of those. That's the little terminal. Some Vietnamese workers being trucked in, another Chinook flying around. Won't can tell you what we actually called them, but it wasn't Chinook. And so the guys in my unit sitting and waiting. That's something you got to do a lot in the Army. Hurry up and wait. And me again. My trusty M16 rifle. I slept with that rifle for over a year in Vietnam. Became quite a good friend. The truck backed up loading stuff into a caribou. A small twin engine transport that we used a lot during that time because it could get in and out of very, very short runways. Okay, I'm not sure what this is. Didn't realize it was still on the film. There's a tanker truck. And a bus. Very seldom saw anything that civilized out where we were. On the left you can see the yellow first cow patch, although we normally wore the camouflage patch. I was their lead sergeant in the unit, Sergeant Gallant, Mr. Sergeant. I was an E5, so I was order battle specialist, among other things. The Huey helicopter, the 1st Cav Division had something like 800 or 900 of those, if I remember correctly. One of the largest air forces in the world, albeit rotary wing rather than fixed wing. That small vehicle we called a mule. This is actually the only civilian aircraft that I ever saw up there. It belonged to the Frenchman on the plantation. The one landing just now is an artillery observation plane. And here comes the Chinook again. That's a light observation helicopter. Obviously I was not helping move that heavy crate in the very hot sun. I was photographing my shadow, but somebody had to do it. Young Vietnamese lady. That's a Cobra gunship. And that looks like a caribou coming in on final approach. Another view of the Cobra gunship. They had very fast machine guns called Gatling guns and rocket launchers and a lot of stuff that brought an uncomfortable situation to the enemy. And lots of helicopters coming in. This is probably one of the companies from one of our battalions coming back in. Some of the tents like we lived in. Another view of a Chinook. Here we go. Now we're actually in the Chinook, and I'm shooting out the windows. We're moved to wherever the battalion was being moved to. Then I think that was down to the Black Horse landing zone. But this is definitely LCND that we're looking at here. I recognize some of those buildings. And we're moving right along. It's amazing that I found this film only recently. It's amazing to be able to look back and remember what was going on 37 years ago. Halfway around the world. In a war no one now remembers. But I was there. A long time ago.